The morning sun poured through the tall glass windows of Brew Haven Cafe, painting golden streaks across polished tables and steaming mugs. It was 8:45 a.m., rush hour, and the line stretched almost to the door. People juggled laptops, phones, and coffee cups, impatiently waiting for their daily caffeine fix before diving into another day of work. Behind the counter, Ethan Miles, 32, moved with calm precision. He wasn't just any barista. He ran the place like clockwork. Every cup had his mark. The perfect pour, the perfect smile, and a soft, "have a great day," that he actually meant. His uniform was simple, black apron, rolled-up sleeves, and a name tag slightly faded from years of service. The cafe buzzed with the rhythm of routine, the hiss of espresso, the clatter of ceramic, the low murmur of conversation. Then, like a thunderclap in a quiet storm, came the voice that shattered it all. "I've been waiting here for 15 minutes. Is this a joke?" Heads turned. A woman stood near the counter. Tall, sharp-featured, designer coat draped over her shoulders like a statement. Her name was Vanessa Hart, a well-known PR executive in the city. Her phone sat on the counter next to a crocodile skin handbag that probably cost more than Ethan's yearly rent. "I ordered a non-fat vanilla latte with almond milk. How hard is that?" she snapped. Ethan wiped his hands and stepped forward. "I'm sorry for the delay, ma'am. We've had a rush this morning, but your drink's almost ready. Let me check." Vanessa crossed her arms, unimpressed. "Almost ready? I have a meeting in 10 minutes. You people have no idea who you're dealing with." The room went silent. A businessman paused mid-sip. A student stopped typing. Ethan gave a polite smile, one he'd practiced for years. "Of course, ma'am. I'll make sure it's perfect." "Perfect?" She laughed, a sound sharp enough to cut glass. "You think perfection happens behind a coffee counter? Do you even know what pressure looks like?" Her assistant, a nervous young woman named Lily, whispered, "Vanessa, maybe we should." "Quiet, Lily," she barked. "If I let this kind of incompetence slide, everyone will think they can waste my time. I'm not just anyone. I'm Vanessa Hart." A phone nearby clicked. Someone had started recording. Ethan noticed but said nothing. He handed her the cup, voice steady. "Your drink, ma'am. Almond milk, extra vanilla, non-fat." She snatched it, took a sip, and immediately slammed it back on the counter. "Wrong temperature. Do you people even read instructions? I made it at 160 degrees, like you asked." "Well, it doesn't taste like 160 degrees, she shouted. A couple in line exchanged looks, trying not to laugh. Ethan could feel every pair of eyes on him. Customers, staff, even the manager frozen in the back. He took a slow breath. "Would you like me to remake it?" he asked. Vanessa smirked, leaning closer. "Do you even know who I am?" Ethan's eyes flickered. For just a second, something changed. A flash of recognition. But his tone stayed calm. "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." Her expression faltered. "Then you know I can have you fired for this." "I know exactly who you are," Ethan continued, his voice level. "And I also know what you did at Braverton Media." The air in the cafe went still. Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me?" Ethan didn't answer. He just gave a faint, knowing smile and walked to the back counter. Whispers spread through the cafe like ripples on water. Lily's face turned pale. Vanessa's phone buzzed, but she didn't move. The barista, the man she'd just humiliated, had recognized her, and not in the way she wanted. Outside, the morning light grew harsher, bouncing off car windows and polished floors. Inside, Vanessa Hart, a woman who ruled boardrooms with fear, felt something new, unease. Because the man she'd mocked wasn't just a barista. He was someone who knew something she'd buried long ago. And in that moment, she had no idea that this small cafe confrontation was about to end her career. The cafe noise slowly returned, But Vanessa couldn't shake Ethan's words. What you did at Braverton Media. That name, Braverton Media, hit her like a cold wave. She hadn't heard it in years, not since the scandal. Not since the promotion that came at someone else's expense. Vanessa forced a smirk, trying to recover her composure. You must be mistaken, she said, voice clipped. But Ethan didn't respond. He moved behind the counter again, calmly refilling cups as if nothing had happened. The confidence in his quietness made it worse. Her assistant Lily whispered, Vanessa, are you okay? Get the car ready. Vanessa hissed, snatching her latte from the counter. We're leaving. She stormed out, heels clicking like gunfire across the marble floor. But as she opened the cafe door, a voice behind her said, low and clear, some things don't stay buried, Ms. Hart. She froze for just a heartbeat. Then she left. That night, Vanessa sat in her high-rise apartment overlooking the city skyline, glass of wine trembling slightly in her hand. The day had felt wrong from the moment she walked into that cafe. But how could that barista know that man, know about Braverton? She turned on her laptop and pulled up an old archive folder. Braverton Media, 2014. Her cursor hovered, then clicked. Inside were files, emails, contracts, personnel reports. And there it was, Ethan Miles' marketing division. Her breath caught. Back then, Ethan had been one of Braverton's rising stars, smart, polite, and far too idealistic for corporate politics. He'd presented an innovative campaign, the one that saved the company from bankruptcy. But when it came time for promotion, Vanessa took the credit. She remembered it vividly. The conference room had been tense. The CEO demanded results. Ethan's proposal sat on the table, but Vanessa had walked in first. She called it her idea. The CEO, impressed, promoted her to executive director. Ethan never said a word. But the next day he was gone. No goodbye, no confrontation. Just an empty desk and a short resignation email. After that, Vanessa's career skyrocketed. She bought her penthouse, hired assistants, made magazine covers. But sometimes, she still saw that quiet young man's face in her mind. The one who smiled through disappointment. Now, that same man had stood in front of her, wearing an apron and serving coffee. But his eyes had told her something else entirely. He wasn't defeated. He was waiting. The next morning, Vanessa walked into her office at Hart PR, but her nerves wouldn't settle. Every reflection reminded her of that encounter. As she scrolled through her emails, one subject line froze her breath. Confidential, Corporate Ethics Review, Hart PR and Braverton Media. She clicked it open. The sender, Ethan Miles. Her heart dropped. Dear Ms. Hart, you may not remember me, but I remember what you took. I'm reaching out because I believe the public deserves honesty, especially from people who claim to represent integrity. I'll be releasing documents tomorrow that show how Braverton's turnaround campaign was authored under my name and presented under yours. I won't be blackmailing you or asking for money. I simply believe the truth should be told. Sincerely, Ethan Miles. Vanessa's hands shook. She reread it twice, hoping it would disappear, but it didn't. Her assistant knocked. Vanessa, there's a man here to see you. Tell him I'm busy. He says you'll want to hear what he has to say. His name's Ethan. Vanessa's pulse quickened. Send him in. Ethan entered the sleek glass office like he owned it. He wasn't wearing his cafe uniform now. Instead, a gray suit, neat and understated. His confidence filled the room. Vanessa tried to sound composed. What do you want from me? Nothing, Ethan said. You already took what you wanted years ago. She crossed her arms. If this is about Braverton, it's ancient history. I earned everything I have. Ethan smiled faintly. Did you? Or did you just play better politics? Listen, she snapped. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but threatening my reputation won't work. I'm not threatening you, he said evenly. I'm giving you a chance to tell the truth before I do. Her phone buzzed on the desk. Social media notifications exploding. She glanced at it. #HeartPR trending. Vanessa Hart accused of stealing campaign from former colleague. Her stomach dropped. Ethan turned to leave. "You asked me yesterday if I knew who you were," he said quietly. "I do now. The woman who built her empire on someone else's work." He stopped at the door. "And now the world does too." For the first time in her career, Vanessa Hart had no words. Her power, built on image and illusion, was cracking. And outside her office window, under the morning sun, the city kept moving, unaware that its most powerful PR woman had just been exposed by the man she once humiliated. By noon, Vanessa Hart's name was everywhere. News alerts flashed across every business feed. Top PR executive accused of plagiarism in corporate scandal. Insider leak. Hart's 2014 Braverton campaign may have been stolen work. What she'd spent 15 years building was collapsing in hours. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Journalists, clients, lawyers, her own PR team. Lily, her assistant, rushed into the office holding a tablet. "Vanessa, the story's trending worldwide. You have to release a statement." Vanessa stood at the window, staring down at the city below, voice cold and flat. "No statement. We deny everything." Ethan sent files to multiple news outlets. "They've published the original proposal with his name on it. The timestamps match his version." Vanessa turned sharply. "Then we spin it. Say he was part of the team, that he's misrepresenting his role." Lily hesitated. "Vanessa, the board wants to suspend you until this is resolved." For a moment, Vanessa didn't move. The color drained from her face. "I am this company," she whispered. "They can't suspend me." But when she glanced at her email, there it was, cold, corporate, and final. Subject: immediate leave of absence, pending investigation. From Board of Directors, Hart PR. Her hands trembled. The same hands that once signed million-dollar contracts were now shaking over a single email. "Get Ethan Miles on the phone," she snapped. "He's not answering calls." "Then find him." That evening, cameras crowded outside Hart PR headquarters. Vanessa slipped out through the underground garage, her sunglasses barely hiding the exhaustion in her eyes. Her driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Where to, ma'am?" She hesitated. Brew Haven Cafe. It was almost empty when she walked in. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air. Ethan stood behind the counter again. Calm, quiet, as if nothing had changed. Vanessa walked up to him, her voice sharp but low. "You think you've ruined me?" Ethan didn't look up from the register. "I didn't ruin you, Vanessa. You did that yourself." "You had no right," she hissed. "You could have come to me privately." "I did. 10 years ago when you took my work. You didn't even look up from your laptop." The words hit her harder than she expected. He continued, still calm. "Do you know what it feels like to see your dream handed to someone else? To watch them get applause for something you built?" Vanessa's jaw clenched. "You think life's fair, Ethan? It's business. Survival of the smartest." He finally looked up, his gaze steady, piercing. "No, it's survival of the kindest. And that's what you never understood." Silence hung between them. The hum of the coffee machine was the only sound. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "You asked me if I knew who you were. I used to. The Vanessa I worked with had ambition, but she also had integrity. Somewhere along the way, you traded one for the other." She glared. "You're lecturing me from behind a counter. And you," he said quietly, "are falling from the top floor." Vanessa's expression cracked. Just a flicker, but real. For the first time, she looked tired. "What do you want from me, Ethan?" she asked, voice trembling. "Nothing. I told you this isn't revenge. It's a reminder." "Of what?" "That truth always comes back, even when you bury it under success." Later that night, Vanessa sat in her car outside her apartment, staring at her own reflection in the rearview mirror. She barely recognized herself. Eyes hollow, makeup smudged, confidence gone. Her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. We all make mistakes, but how we fix them defines who we are. EM. Attached was a link. A news article. Ethan Miles launches ethics initiative for young professionals. Integrity over image. Her throat tightened. He wasn't capitalizing on her downfall. He was building something out of it. For the first time in years, she felt something that terrified her more than failure, shame. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sat in a small office above Brew Haven Cafe, the same space where he once wrote the campaign Vanessa stole. On his wall hung a simple frame, "Truth needs no spin." His phone lit up, an email from a news network inviting him to speak about corporate ethics. He smiled faintly, but his mind wasn't on fame. It was on a promise he'd made years ago, to never let silence protect corruption again. Still, part of him wondered if Vanessa had understood the message. He didn't want her destroyed. He wanted her changed. And somewhere deep down, maybe she still could be. 2 weeks later, the skyline of the city looked the same, shining, untouchable. But for Vanessa Hart, everything beneath that glitter had cracked. Her penthouse was quiet now. The phone had stopped ringing, not because the storm was over, but because everyone had already left her behind. Her assistant, Lily, resigned. Her PR team vanished. Even the clients she once bragged about had paused their contracts. On the breakfast counter sat 3 newspapers, all carrying her face on the front page. The fall of a PR queen. From power to pariah, Vanessa Hart's corporate collapse. She tore the headlines in half and threw them in the trash, but she couldn't throw away the guilt pressing on her chest. That morning, she received a single email from Ethan Miles. Subject: Panel discussion invitation, Truth and Redemption in Business. For a long moment, she just stared at it. He was inviting her to speak, the woman he'd exposed, to sit beside him on stage and talk about truth. Is this some kind of humiliation? She whispered to herself. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Ethan didn't operate like that. That was what made this harder. 3 days later, the event was everywhere. A televised panel at the Global Leadership Forum, moderated by one of the most respected anchors in journalism. Topic: Integrity in Modern Business. Lessons from Failure. Ethan Miles was headlining, and beside his name, reluctantly, was hers. Vanessa hadn't replied to his email, but somehow, she still found herself walking through the glass doors of the conference hall that Saturday morning. She'd chosen a simple outfit this time. A gray blazer, minimal makeup, hair tied back. No statement jewelry. No power mask. Just her. Inside, cameras clicked, lights flashed. People whispered as she passed. There was judgment in their eyes, but also curiosity. Ethan was already on stage, greeting other speakers. He looked calm, professional, not triumphant, not bitter, just steady. When their eyes met across the stage, there was no hostility, just history. The moderator welcomed everyone. Today we're joined by 2 figures whose story has sparked global discussion on ethics, accountability, and the power of honesty. The introduction stung. Vanessa could feel 1,000 eyes on her as she sat down beside Ethan. The moderator turned to him first. "Mr. Miles, your story resonated with millions. A man wronged by the system who chose to respond with transparency, not vengeance. Why?" Ethan's voice was calm. "Because revenge fixes nothing. It only swaps one injustice for another. What I wanted was change, a reminder that integrity isn't weakness. It's the foundation of real progress." Then the moderator turned to Vanessa. "Ms. Hart, this must be difficult. But you're here today and that says something. What made you accept the invitation?" Vanessa took a breath. The air felt heavier than ever. "I didn't want to," she admitted. "I thought this would be another stage to shame me. But then I realized shame isn't the enemy. Denial is. The audience fell silent. She continued, voice trembling slightly. I built my career on controlling stories, on shaping public image. I forgot that the truth doesn't need control. It needs courage. And when I lost everything, I learned that courage usually comes when there's nothing left to protect. Ethan glanced at her. Not with pride, not pity, just quiet respect. The moderator leaned forward. So, what's next for you both? Ethan smiled faintly. We're working together. The audience murmured. Vanessa blinked, caught off guard. Ethan turned to her. I reached out because I believe people can change. We're launching a joint mentorship program, teaching young professionals about ethics in leadership. Half of it will be funded by my foundation. The other half, by the woman who taught me how dangerous silence can be. Vanessa exhaled softly, then nodded. He's right. I can't erase what I did, but I can help others avoid the same mistake. The room erupted in applause, not for victory, but for growth. Later that afternoon, when the cameras were gone, Vanessa and Ethan stood outside under the bright daylight. The city hummed around them. You really think people will believe I've changed? She asked quietly. Ethan looked at her. It's not about what people believe. It's about what you become when they stop looking. She smiled faintly for the first time in weeks. You know, you were right back at the cafe. About what? I asked if you knew who I was. Turns out, I didn't even know myself. Ethan chuckled softly. Then maybe now's a good time to start. They shook hands, sunlight glinting off the cafe across the street. The same one where everything began. 6 months later, the city looked different to Vanessa Hart. Not because it had changed, but because she had. The skyscrapers that once felt like trophies now looked like reminders. The office towers, the cars, the lights. All the noise she used to chase now seemed so small compared to what she'd gained from silence, humility, and truth. It was a bright Monday morning at the new downtown headquarters of the TruthWorks Initiative, a mentorship and ethics foundation co-founded by Ethan Miles and Vanessa Hart. Outside, a group of young professionals lined up for the opening seminar, their notepads ready, their faces full of hope. Inside, sunlight poured through the glass walls. A long banner stretched across the back wall. Integrity builds what ambition alone cannot. Ethan stood by the podium, reviewing his notes. Vanessa approached quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. Still prefer black? She asked with a small smile. He looked up, amused. Still remember. Vanessa handed him the cup, her tone softer than ever. Feels strange, doesn't it? Working together after everything. Ethan nodded. Strange, but right. She looked around at the volunteers setting up, the interns arranging seats. You really think people can change, don't you? I don't think, he said. I know, because I've seen it. Their eyes met. The unspoken weight between them no longer bitter, just human. When the seminar began, Vanessa stood on stage beside Ethan, the lights warm and bright. The crowd filled the hall. Journalists, students, even some of her former colleagues who once turned away. Ethan began the introduction. Today's not about the mistakes we've made, but the lessons we've earned. Every story of success you admire probably began with failure, the kind that humbles you enough to grow. Then he turned to Vanessa. And sometimes the people who fall the hardest end up building the bridge others walk safely across. Vanessa stepped forward, heart pounding. I used to believe power meant control, she began. Control over people, image, reputation. But real power is impact, and that only comes when you stop pretending and start listening. Her voice grew steadier. Years ago, I took credit for someone else's work. I thought winning mattered more than honesty. I was wrong. I lost my career, my reputation, and for a while, myself. But the man I hurt didn't destroy me. He gave me a second chance, not to erase what I did, but to rewrite what comes next. The room was silent. Even the cameras didn't click. She looked toward Ethan, her expression open, genuine. I spent years teaching people how to build brands. Now, I want to teach them how to build character. The audience erupted in applause. Not polite, real. The kind that carries emotion. Ethan smiled, clapping with them. For him, it wasn't about redemption or headlines. It was about proof that forgiveness could build something stronger than revenge ever could. After the event, a young woman approached them, holding a worn resume. "Ms. Hart, Mr. Miles," she said shyly. "I wanted to thank you. I almost quit my job last week after my boss took credit for my project. But then I saw your story online. It made me realize one bad moment doesn't define who we are, how we respond does." Vanessa smiled warmly. "That's the whole reason we're here. Tell me about your project." The girl's eyes brightened. As she spoke, Vanessa listened, really listened, the way Ethan had once wanted her to. Ethan watched from a few feet away, quietly proud. This was the moment he'd hoped for. Not her downfall, but her return as something better. That evening, when the crowd was gone and the sun was setting behind the skyline, Vanessa and Ethan stood by the window of the empty conference hall. "Do you ever think about that cafe?" she asked. "All the time," Ethan said. "It's where you threw a latte at me, remember?" She laughed softly. "You never even flinched." "I'd waited a decade for that moment," he said, grinning. "But I didn't want to win that way." "Good," she said, "because you didn't just win. You taught me how to." They stood there for a long moment, watching the city bathed in gold. "Funny," Vanessa murmured. "You were a barista that day. I saw someone beneath me. But now I realize you were already ahead." Ethan turned toward her, smiling faintly. "Maybe we just needed to arrive at the same floor." A year later, TruthWorks Initiative had chapters in 6 major cities. Their mentorship program trained over 1,000 interns. And every brochure carried the same simple quote: "Integrity is not a strategy. It's the only legacy that lasts." Ethan Miles and Vanessa Hart. On a quiet Sunday morning, Vanessa walked into Brew Haven Cafe, the same place where she once screamed, where everything began. She ordered 2 coffees, placed one at the corner table by the window, and smiled at the memory. A waitress asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" Vanessa looked out at the daylight streaming in. "No," she said softly. "Just saying thank you." She left the second cup untouched, for the man who had once taught her that truth doesn't destroy, it rebuilds. Outside, the sun lit up the city like a new beginning. And somewhere across town, Ethan smiled as he opened a text from Vanessa that simply read, "For what it's worth, I finally learned who I am." He replied with one line, "That's the best PR story you've ever told."